What would you do if your own child humiliated you in front of everyone right after you gave them the most expensive gift of their life? I walked out of my son's birthday party that day, but what I did next, well, let's just say he'll never forget it. Stay with me, because this takes a turn you won't see coming. Let me take you back to a Saturday in late spring, the kind of day when the sun is just warm, enough to make you forget about your aching knees, and the birds are chirping, like they're auditioning for a Disney movie. My son David was turning 40. A milestone if you ask me, though he'd probably say it was just another excuse for cake and a few too many drinks. Now, I don't know about you, but when your only child hits the big 4 new, you start thinking about all the ways you could show him just how proud you are. Maybe it's a mother thing, or maybe it's just me. But I wanted to do something big, something memorable, something that would make him feel as special as he did the day he was born, when I first held him and thought, well, there goes my sleep for the next 18 years. So I did what any slightly sentimental, occasionally over-the-top mother would do. I bought him a car. Not just any car. Mind you, a brand new imported SUV, the kind with leather seats that smell like a fancy handbag, a sound system that could wake the neighbours, and more buttons than the cockpit of a 747. I'd spent weeks researching test driving and negotiating with a salesman who looked like he'd just stepped out of a cologne commercial. I wanted the best for my boy, even if he was a grown man with a mortgage and a receding hairline. The morning of the party, I barely slept. I was up at dawn, fussing over the decorations, double-checking the catering, and making sure the champagne was chilling just right. I even wore my lucky earrings, the ones I wore to his high school graduation, his wedding. And embarrassingly, the time I won $50 at bingo, the house was spotless. The backyard was strung with twinkling lights, and the SUV was pie. Arced out front, gleaming in the sun with a giant red bow on the hood, I could practically hear the neighbours whispering who won the lottery as they peeked through their curtains. I'll admit I felt a little smug after all. How many mothers get to give their son a gift like that? The guests started arriving around 3, and soon the house was filled with laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses, old friends, family David's co-workers, even his college roommate who still owed him $50 from a poker game in 2002. Everyone was in high spirits, and I could feel the excitement building as we waited for the big reveal. I kept glancing at David, who was making the rounds, shaking hands and telling stories, completely unaware of the surprise waiting for him outside. Finally, the moment arrived. I called everyone to the front yard, my heart pounding like I was about to propose marriage instead of hand over a set of car keys. David looked at me puzzled as I handed him a small velvet box. He opened it, saw the keys, and for a split second, his face lit up with genuine surprise. I gestured to the SUV and the crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, people cheered, and I felt like the star of my own Hallmark movie. But then, David raised his glass, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. He cleared his throat. And in that moment, I should have known something was coming. My son has always had a sharp wit, the kind that can cut through tension or, apparently, a mother's heart. He looked around at the crowd, then right at me and said a toast to the foolish mother who tries to buy love like buying bread at the bakery. For a moment there was silence, then laughter. Loud, raucous, belly-aching laughter, the kind that makes you wonder if you missed the punchline. I stood there frozen, my smile plastered on like a bad toupee. I felt like I just slipped on a banana, peel in front of the whole town. My cheeks burned and I could feel the sting of tears threatening to spill over, but I held them back. I wasn't about to let anyone see me cry. Not today. Not over this. I glanced around, hoping someone would come to my rescue, but everyone was too busy laughing, clapping David on the back, and making jokes about expensive bread. I tried to laugh along, but it came out more like a cough. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the pavement, to rewind the clock, and just buy him a nice watch instead. But there I was, standing in the middle of my own party, feeling like the punchline to a joke I didn't understand. Have you ever tried to do something nice for someone, only to have it blow up in your face? Maybe you spent hours cooking a special meal, only for them to say they're not hungry, Or you planned a surprise trip and they complained about the hotel. It's a special kind of pain, isn't it? The kind that makes you question your own judgment, your own worth. I stood there clutching my empty champagne glass, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake, but as the laughter died down and the party moved on, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this moment define me or my relationship with my son. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and decided that if David wanted to make a joke out of my love, well, maybe it was time for me to show him just how serious I could be. I'll tell you, there's a moment in every parent's life when you realize you're not just raising a child, you're raising a person who at some point is going to look you in the eye and test every ounce of patience you've ever had. That moment hit me square in the chest as I stood in the middle of David's birthday party, the laughter from his foolish mother toast still echoing in my ears. I could feel the eyes of our friends and family darting between us, some with sympathy, others with that awkward, "Thank goodness it's not me." Look, I could have cried, I could have yelled, I could have thrown the world's most expensive tantrum right there on the front lawn, but instead I did something I'd never done before. I stood up, smoothed my dress, flashed the brightest smile I could muster, and walked right out of my own son's birthday party. Who does that? Apparently I do. As I made my way down the driveway, the sound of laughter and music faded behind me, replaced by the steady thump of my heart and the crunch of gravel under my sensible shoes. I passed the shiny SUV still sitting, there with its ridiculous red bow, and made my way to my own car, my old reliable sedan that smelled faintly of lavender, and, if I'm honest, a little bit like dog treats. I slid into the driver's seat, closed the door, and just sat there for a moment staring at my hands on the steering wheel. My fingers trembled not from anger, but from a strange mix of embarrassment and something else. Something that felt a lot like resolve. Why did I let myself get humiliated like that? Why did I let David, my own flesh and blood, treat me as if my love was something to be mocked in front of a crowd? I replayed the scene in my mind, the way his words had stung, the way the laughter had rolled over me like a wave. I thought about all the years I'd spent, putting him first, packing lunches, cheering at soccer games, helping with homework, and later, listening to his grown-up problems over endless cups of coffee. I thought about the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the quiet pride I'd felt watching him become a man. And now here I was, sitting alone in my car, wondering if any of it had really mattered. I started the engine, but I didn't drive away right away. Instead, I sat there, letting the air conditioning hum and the memories swirl. I thought about my own mother, a woman who never took nonsense from anyone. Not even her own children. She used to say, people will treat you the way you let them. I'd always nodded, thinking I understood. But now, in the glow of the party lights and the sting of my son's words, I realized I'd been letting David get away with too much for too long. I'd let him take my love for granted. Let him believe that no matter what he said or did, I'd always be there smiling and or giving. Well, not this time. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly, feeling a strange sense of calm settle over me. I wasn't angry. Not really. I was disappointed, sure. But more than that, I was determined to remind David that love isn't something you can buy or mock or take for granted. It's something you earn, something you respect. And if he needed a lesson in that, well, I was just the woman to teach it. I finally put the car in gear and drove away, the party fading into the distance behind me. As I turned onto the main road, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the SUV still gleaming in the sunlight, still waiting for someone to appreciate it. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. Here I was, driving away from a $300,000 gift, from a party I'd planned down to the last detail, from a son who clearly needed a wake-up call. The drive home was quiet, giving me plenty of time to think. I thought about all the times I'd put myself last, all the times I'd bitten my tongue to keep the peace, all the times I'd let David's sharp tongue slide because that's just how he is. But as I pulled into my driveway, I realized something important sometimes. The scariest thing isn't what others do to us. It's what we allow. It's the way we let little hurts pile up until they become big ones. The way we convince ourselves that love means never standing up for ourselves. I sat in my car for a long time, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I thought about what I wanted to do next, about how I wanted to handle this new chapter in my relationship with David. I knew I couldn't just let it go, not this time. I needed to do something, not just for him, but for myself. I needed to show him that love isn't about grand gestures or expensive gifts. It's about respect, about boundaries, about knowing when to say enough. So I made a decision. I was going to take back the SUV. I was going to take back my power, and I was going to remind my son and maybe myself that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And as I sat there, the last light of day fading around me, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Excitement for what came next, for the lesson I was about to teach, for the woman I was about to become, because sometimes the best way to love someone is to show them what you're really made of, even if it means walking out of your own son's birthday party. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. You know that feeling when you finally decide to clean out the attic after decades of just shoving things in and closing the door? That's what it felt like, liberating, a little scary and long overdue. I made myself a strong cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table and stared at the keys to the SUV sitting in front of me. They looked so small, so insignificant compared to the weight they'd carried the day before. I thought about David's words, the laughter, the sting of humiliation, and I realized I was done letting anyone, especially my own son, make me feel less than. It was time to take back control and maybe, just maybe, have a little fun while I was at it. So I picked up the phone and dialed the dealership. The salesman answered. All chipper and ready to talk about extended warranties. Hi, this is Mrs. Thompson. I said, my voice steady. I need you to come pick up the SUV. Turns out it was a mistake. There was a long pause on the other end, and I could practically hear him choking on his morning coffee. Excuse me, he sputtered. Is there a problem with the vehicle? I almost laughed. No, the car is perfect. It's just not the right fit for my family after all. He stammered a bit. Tried to talk me out of it, but I was firm. Just send someone to get it, please. I hung up feeling a rush of satisfaction. It was like returning a pair of shoes that pinched your toes, relief mixed with a dash of rebellion. But I wasn't done yet. Oh no, not by a long shot. I sat there, sipping my coffee, thinking about what I wanted to do with the money. For years I'd put everyone else first. David, my late husband, even the dog. I'd saved, scrimped and sacrificed, always telling myself that one day I'd do something just for me. Well, that day had finally arrived. I opened my laptop, typed luxury cruises into the search bar, and before I knew it, I was booking myself a month-long cruise around the world, the kind with white glove service, endless buffets, and stops in places I'd only ever seen in travel magazines. I could almost hear my mother's voice in my head. It's about time, honey. The next few days were a whirlwind. The dealership sent a tow truck to pick up the SUV, and I watched. From the window as it was loaded up and driven away, I half expected David to come running down the street, waving his arms and demanding an explanation, but he was nowhere to be seen. I packed my bags, arranged for a neighbor to water my plants, and set off for the adventure of a lifetime. As the ship pulled away from the dock, I stood on the balcony of my cabin, the salty breeze in my hair, and felt a sense of freedom I hadn't known since I was a girl. But here's where the story gets really good. At every port, Barcelona, Rome, Santorini, Istanbul, I bought a postcard and sent it to David. Each one was short and sweet, having the time of my life. Love, Mom. Sometimes I'd add a little detail, just to twist the knife a bit. Try this cargo today. Delicious or dance? The tango with a charming stranger in Buenos Aires. I imagined him at home checking the mailbox, growing more and more bewildered with each new card. I could almost see his face, the confusion turning to concern, then maybe a little bit of regret. It didn't take long for the phone calls to start. The first one came while I was lounging by the pool, a fruity drink in hand. My phone buzzed with David's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail the next day. Another call, then a text, Mom. Where are you? What happened to the car? I smiled, snapped a selfie. Why? The Mediterranean in the background, and sent it to him with a simple caption. Living my best life, the messages kept coming. Some worried, some annoyed, all unanswered. For the first time in years, I was in control of the conversation. I spent my days exploring ancient ruins, sampling exotic foods, and making friends with people from all over the world. I learned to play mahjong, took a painting class, and even tried my hand at karaoke. Turns out I'm not half bad at dancing, Queen. Every night I'd sit on my balcony, watching the sunset over a new city, and think about how far I'd come. Not just in miles, but in spirit. I wasn't just running away from David's hurtful words. I was running towards something new, something just for me. Of course there were moments of doubt, late at night when the ship was quiet and the only sound was the gentle lapping of waves. Against the hull I'd wonder if I'd gone too far. Was I being petty? Was I teaching David a lesson or just punishing him for a lifetime of taking me for granted? But then I'd remember the look on his face at the party, the way he'd laughed at my love, and I'd know I'd made the right choice. Sometimes the only way to change a relationship is to change yourself first. By the time the cruise ended, I felt like a new woman. I was tanned, relaxed, and ready to face whatever came next. I had a stack of postcards, a phone full of photos, and a heart full of memories. And as I stepped off the ship, I knew one thing for sure. David would never forget the lesson I just taught him. And neither would I. When I finally returned home, the air felt different, crisper somehow, as if the world itself had shifted while I was away. My suitcase rolled behind me, wheels clacking on the sidewalk, and I paused for a moment at my own front door, just to take it all in. I'd left as one woman and come back as another. And I wondered if anyone would notice. I didn't have to wonder long. There, sitting on my porch swing, was David. He looked up as I approached, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't have that cocky know-it-all grin. Instead, he looked sheepish, like a little boy who'd just been caught with his hand in the cookie jar, crumbs still on his lips. He stood up, hands shoved deep in his pockets, and shuffled his feet. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice softer than I'd heard it in years. "Welcome home." I set my suitcase down and waited, letting the silence stretch between us. I could see the questions in his eyes, the apology hovering on his lips. And I decided to let him squirm just a little longer. After all, I'd spent years smoothing things over, making excuses and letting him off the hook. This time I wanted him to feel the weight of his words, to understand that love isn't something you can mock or take for granted. He cleared his throat, glancing at the ground. I wanted to talk to you about the party and the car and, well, everything." He looked up and I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. Genuine regret. "I'm sorry, Mum. I didn't realize how much you do for me. I guess I took you for granted. I thought I was being funny, but I was just being, well, a jerk." He let out a shaky laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. "I missed you. I kept waiting for you to call, to come back, I don't know, forgive me like you always do, but you didn't. And it made me realize how much I rely on you, how much I need you." I felt a lump rise in my throat, but I swallowed it down. I'd spent a month learning to put myself first, to find joy in my own company, and I wasn't about to let that go. Still, hearing those words from my son, my grown, stubborn, sometimes thoughtless son, meant more to me than any apology I could have imagined. I sat down on the porch swing and patted the seat beside me. He hesitated, then sat, shoulders hunched, waiting for my verdict. "You know, David, I began when you're a parent, you spend your whole life trying to give your kids the best. You want them to be happy, to feel loved, to know they matter. But sometimes, in all that giving, you forget to teach them how to appreciate it. You forget to show them that love isn't about things. It's about respect, about kindness, about seeing the person in front of you, not just what they can do for you." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the little boy he used to be, the man he'd become, and the man he still had the potential to be. He nodded, eyes shining with unshed tears. "I know, Mom. I really do. I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to buy my love. I'm sorry I embarrassed you. I don't know. I guess I thought I was too old to need my mom. But the truth is, I still do. Maybe more than ever. We sat there for a while the late afternoon, sun casting long shadows across the porch. I told him about my cruise, the places I'd seen, the people I'd met, the adventures I'd had. I showed him photos of me dancing in Buenos Aires, eating gelato in Rome, and laughing with new friends in Santorini. For the first time, he listened. Really listened. Not just waiting for his turn to speak, but soaking in every word. I could see the pride in his eyes, the realization that his mother was more than just the woman who raised him. She was a person with dreams, with courage, with a life of her own. And you know what? That apology, that moment of connection, was worth more than any fancy car. It was worth more than all the gifts and grand gestures in the world, because sometimes the best gift you can give your kids isn't something you can buy. It's a lesson they'll remember for the rest of their lives. It's the courage to walk away when you're not being respected, the strength to put yourself first, and the wisdom to know that love is about so much more than things. As the sun dipped below the horizon, David put his arm around my shoulders and squeezed. Thank you, Mom, for everything, for teaching me, even when I didn't want to learn. I smiled, leaning into his embrace, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. I knew things wouldn't be perfect. No relationship ever is. But I also knew we'd turned a corner. We'd learned something. Important, both of us, and we'd never forget it. So let me ask you, what would you have done? Have you ever had to teach someone a lesson? The hard way, sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones that matter most. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand up for yourself, even if it means walking away from the people you love most. Sometimes a woman's silence holds more power than 1,000 words. They mistook my kindness for weakness, but they forgot who raised them. This isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about dignity and the strength to walk away with your head held high. Thank you for watching this video. Share your thoughts in the comments. I truly value every story and every voice. Don't forget to subscribe to Tears and Strength and share this video with your friends.